Hello and welcome to episode 353 of the Stacey West Podcast. 353 is the number that you get if you add together the appearances that Adam Jackson, Lewis Monsmer and Ethan Arahan have made, and then take the magic number 3 and add that on top. That's because Ethan Arahan made his 100th appearance yesterday, Lewis Monsmer made his 100th appearance yesterday, 100th appearance, and Adam Jackson made his 150th appearance, making what feels like his 100th appearance on the podcast is one of my co-hosts, Mr. Lamming. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Can't be far away now. Can't be far away. Are you going to get me a special present when I get to my 100th?
No. A replacement.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
We do that.
Yeah, fair. I asked for that, didn't I? I asked for that. But
the thing is, you don't know when your 100th is. So you'd just be guessing. So basically what you want is just a present.
Yeah, that's fine by me.
And I got you a present once before, a toilet brush, and I don't know where it is now in your house. I haven't seen it since.
I know where it is. It's in that cupboard, just there. So yes, that's
normal people keep it by the toilet.
Well, that is the toilet.
Ah, okay. Apparently, I don't know your house all that well.
But hello. Yes, obviously I'm well. We won yesterday and won convincingly. It's nice. We've been looking forward to this all day. I'm sure you have as well. Yeah, not sure if you can remember. I also had quite a lot of plans last night, today, all ruined by Ben Ward. He recommended a TV show that me and Steph should watch called Severance, and it's taken over our lives over the last couple of days. It's incredible.
What's it about?
Really good. It's really good. It's on on Apple thingy. So the premise is that it's kind of sci-fi in a way. So ultimately you have two memories, one that's at work that has no recollection of outside work, and one outside work that has no recollection of what is in work. And it's good. It's really good. I won't give anything away, but it's very, very good.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm watching something called The Americans, which I think is quite old. So it's like a Cold War spy thing, and it's a Golden Globe winner, and it's got some relatively famous. When I say famous faces, it's got like faces that you recognise. But funnily enough, it actually shares quite a lot of the cast with a film I watched recently, and I have to tell people about this film. I'd forgotten about it for the last week. I watched a film called Cocaine Bear the other day.
Okay.
Now, Cocaine Bear, and what Cocaine Bear is exactly what it says on the tin. So it is basically a drugs drop goes wrong, whole rucksacks full of cocaine got dropped into a national park, and a bear eats it, becomes addicted to cocaine, and attacks everybody who's then hunting for the for said drug. It's kind of like a horror comedy thing. But it's got these actors and actresses in it who are in this Golden Globe 6-series Cold War special. There's one woman in an old woman. She plays a park ranger, and she's a Russian spy in one thing. I've seen her in Sneaky Pete, which is really good. She's been in other stuff. Kerry Russell's in it. Yeah, it's crazy. But Cocaine Bear. If you are at a loose end right now, you after this recording or after you've listened to it, and you want to go home and watch a great film, I absolutely wholeheartedly recommend that you avoid Cocaine Bear. With everything you will be better sitting and watching White Noise for an hour and a half.
Okay, I feel thoroughly warned, and I will avoid that, primarily because we've got one more episode of the first series of Severance to watch, followed by starting the second series. That's my plan for this evening after recording this podcast.
The one thing I would say about that, though, is does that have 3 bear cubs who are addicted to cocaine?
I haven't seen those episodes yet, have I? But not yet.
No.
Not yet.
No.
So I suppose, there's always that the film has over the TV show.
I do think that narcotic addicted wildlife should actually be included in more films and series.
Okay.
To be honest.
Hey,
yeah.
How are you going to do a really clever little segue from this?
Segue from this. Yeah. I tell you something, I think there was 1,600 fans in Sincilbank who wished that they were addicted to narcotics rather than following their team away yesterday. How about that?
That's pretty good.
I nearly said, how about that, in the style of a rather famous person that used to go, how's about that then? But I decided not to because it would be inappropriate. Brilliant. 5 minutes in, we've already covered drugs and Jimmy Savile. Right. Okay. So we'll move on to talk about Lincoln City and Peterborough United. I want to make a point, first of all, about the Peterborough fans, if I may, because I am going to lavish praise upon them for a couple of different things. Not the ones that walked out after 2 goals. They were brilliant. They were hilarious. First of all, obviously, there was the round of applause for Brian Bolden at the beginning of the game, which was impeccably observed by almost everybody I could see in the away end. It doesn't always happen. I mean, if we go away, Lincoln fans go away, we normally join in the applause. But, I've spoken to people from the foundation who said, well, when the Fighting Fit Cancer Group walked around, the Stevenage fans booed them as they walked past. And there was a youth team did the same. And I can't remember the other team that booed. It might have been Oldham or Forest Green or something like that, but booed them as they walked past. So I thought the Peterborough fans showed a little bit of class. I also thought they showed a great bit of class at one point where I think we started singing Peterborough get battered everywhere they go, or Posh get battered, and they joined in. I just thought that was brilliant. It was one of those moments, where because you're always going to get the knobheads at the front going, oh, come on, let's have a fight. But I think en masse, there's very little difference between Peterborough fans, Lincoln City fans, dare I say it, Grimsby Town fans. The majority of the normal match going fan, we're all the same. The only difference is we support a better team. So I just wanted to give a little bit of respect to Peterborough United fans for observing the applause and having a good sense of humour when they got absolutely smashed to pieces at Sincilbank. The first time we've scored 5 goals past them, the first time we've beat them since 2020. I think the first time I've ever preferred as to win a game on a Saturday and lose on a Tuesday than draw the Saturday and win the Tuesday. I would prefer us beat Peterborough and lose to Blackpool. So, Chris, where on earth do we start? Team selection? Because I came to you in the...
Let's do that. Zone. You were quite upset in the fan zone.
I was quite upset. And why was that?
Because James Collins wasn't starting and you were quite upset at... Well, I thought at me for even trying to defend the reason that might be. Now we said kind of off air, kind of away from this, that we both thought that James Collins would start. What I did say, I think I mentioned this on Thursday we played Poole, it might have only been in passing, is that I thought he'd start. I think he probably should, but it would be harsh on Fred, who played really well against Northampton, and I suppose that performance deserves to keep his starting place, and he hasn't had many starts this season. Fred hasn't, so. Yeah, I thought if we hadn't signed James Collins, Fred would absolutely be guaranteed to start again because he deserved to. He didn't deserve to be dropped after being one of probably in the top 3 performers against Northampton, along with Arahan and O'Connor. So I think it's probably quite good management to reward good performance, particularly the news this week or the rumours in the last couple of weeks around Fred. So it kind of made sense. I wasn't disappointed, but I was a little surprised because I think we all know what we need is to improve. Prior to scoring 5 goals, retrospective is great, isn't it? But prior to kickoff, we'd scored 1 goal in forever. And as much as the monkey was off our back, and I think there's a lot more positivity around the club and certainly around the fan zone than there had been for a little while. Though in fairness, it's the first time I've been in the fan zone for ages because it's been pissing it down for the last few home games. But yeah, it kind of made sense, I think, is the point I'm making. And as much as I hoped Collins would start, because we know that he all felt like when we signed him, he was the missing piece of the jigsaw. And it was like, oh, well, why have we signed him then? A sort of thing. I kind of guessing that's where your mentality was. Why have we signed him if he's not coming in to start against the game that we could, a team stylistically that we could really kind of dominate. So, but we didn't. No. And Fred, I think, deservedly kept his place after performing really well against Northampton and probably justified it.
Yeah, no, that's not why I was annoyed, as in why did we sign him? Because stylistically, I felt that although we won the Northampton game, I felt that we were still a little bit weak up top. And I just thought, you look at Joe Taylor, went into Huddersfield, scored early doors from Huddersfield. Doesn't matter that he hadn't played much for Luton. They stuck him in there. Nathan Lowe, to a degree, played for Walsall, but League Two. Is he good? Is he going to be up to Championship fitness? Doesn't matter. Stick him in. Scored after 9 minutes. For me, when you make a signing like James Collins, which is a marquee signing, as we will discuss, because he's absolutely proven it. He's put the marquee up nice and early, hasn't he? I wanted to see him play, and I was a little bit concerned that if we didn't start Collins and we got off to a slow start and Peterborough got a goal, and then we bring him on after 65 minutes and it's too much for him to get into the run of the game on 65 minutes when you're 1-0 down because the game's already running away from you, people would criticise Michael Skubala. And I think a lot of the criticism that's been aimed at Michael Skubala pre the last couple of games has been grossly unfair. Mainly it's because I'm biased and I like him. I like him as a person. I like him as a manager. I was the same with Michael Appleton. I put myself out there. And, sometimes I let the fact whether I like somebody personally or not maybe cloud my judgment in how I think they should be treated. I was worried that it was a move that could have backfired badly. It didn't backfire badly. 12 minutes gone. Because it was a fairly even opening, I thought. After the first 12 minutes was fairly even. Possession-wise, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. We perhaps edged it. We perhaps looked a little bit better, a little bit hungrier. And then we obviously go and get the first goal. And for me, it's a goal that we could have scored in any one of the games during that terrible run, but it just doesn't bounce for you when you look down. And it just felt like the Northampton win. We scraped through the second half, but it just felt like we took a little bit of confidence into it. And Dom Jeffries has been credited with the goal, but I've watched it back and I think he's very lucky to be credited with the goal because it was a heavy, heavy deflection.
But we'll give Dom his goal because I think his performance earned it. He was really good, as everyone was, but Dom was, I think, particularly good. I think we started the game really well. I'm not sure it was that even. In terms of possession, it kind of was, but you expect that against Peterborough United. I can't remember, I was sitting in the co-op stand or GBM stand as it is now, can't remember very many times before we scored, looking to my left. Pretty much all the action was in Peterborough's half, whether they had the ball or we did. The ball was in that part of the pitch. And what was really nice is that we scored when we were on top, which is something that we hadn't done. We weren't peppering the goal, but we had good territory. We'd started the game relatively well. But we did something that we'd been struggling to do in our run before. We put the ball in the back of the net when we had the opportunity to do so, and that is good. But maybe similar to Northampton, in that opening quarter, maybe just before that, 6 or so, 15 minutes of the game, we started well, but we didn't do a lot different as we have in lots of other games. And we mentioned this before, but we scored, and that just makes such a difference.
Yeah, it does. Now, I've got a quick question about the goal, and it never crossed my mind. Our good friend, Mr. Summers, was at the game, and he raised it with me, Pete Summers. He said, hint of offside for the header back from Pawdy. So obviously it's a good free kick from Tom Bayliss, who, by the way, had started the game excellently and got better from there. But Bayliss was excellent. And I think you and I said afterwards, probably only didn't finish the game because he picked up a booking. So, yeah, a slight hint of offside potentially. But again, it's just that sometimes your looks are not with you. We haven't had an awful lot of looks certainly coming through November and December. So even if it was offside, it was just nice for us to see, I think, a set piece move come off, because how many times have we looked for Pawdy at the back stick and the header hasn't come across or it's been cleared or something like that? I know it wasn't the crispest of goals, but it was just nice to see not a scrappy goal, but a kind of a set piece goal and a well-worked goal that ended up in the back of the net.
Yeah, you kind of play for chaos sometimes, don't you? Because it's certainly easier to deal with that when you're in the attacking team rather than the defensive team. As a defensive unit, you want to be organised and you want to be kind of robust. And when there's a bit of chaos and you don't know where your marker's going, you don't know where the ball is, you're facing the wrong way, your body position's wrong, it's obviously more difficult for a defensive unit. And yeah, it's been really nice for us to make that count. We're now, by the way, of course, 3 of our goals plus a penalty, which is counted separately, but 3 of our goals came from set pieces yesterday, which is brilliant because they're such an important part of the game. We're also now back on top of the league in regard to goals from set pieces. I think what's interesting is Peterborough are now bottom of the league in terms of they've conceded the most goals out of anyone in League One from set plays after conceding 3 yesterday against us. So it was our pros against their kind of cons, if you like, our strengths against their weaknesses. But as much as over the whole season it's been a strength, I think it hasn't been as big a strength in the recent weeks, again, it hasn't quite bounced for us, whether you put that down to luck, confidence, belief, defensive organisation from the opposition. There are so many factors. Over the season, we've been good, but it was, in terms of putting it in the net, it was earlier in the season rather than recently. So for it all to come off again yesterday was lovely. I'd be honest, I didn't see the offside, didn't even cross my mind it might be a potential offside. So I can't comment on that.
No, Pete's talking shit. I've just watched it back. There's no way it was offside. And the header back was House, as Malcolm, our resident Stacey West historian, has finally caught one live. So he will be chipping in throughout. He said that the header back was House, and he's quite right. It was House. That is my mistake. When you've got 5 goals to analyse, it's not as easy to get all the things right, is it? Because it's there's so much to look at. Now, I felt that after the goal, before our free kick, was probably Peterborough's best spell. They hit the post with their free kick. I felt that their fans kind of got behind them a little bit after the stuffing was knocked out of them. It just felt like that the wind was behind them. And then we get a free kick up the other end, and we don't hit the post. We hit the back of the net. Now, I saw a debate somewhere, was George Grant's free kick better or Tom Bayliss's? Recency bias saw Tom Bayliss win that vote. Still think a last-minute winner probably is a little bit better. But this, comparison is the thief of joy. So let's not compare the free kick. Let's just say, what a shit pinger from Mr. Bayliss.
Yeah, it was brilliant for him to get a goal. I think there's a couple of things to touch on there. You mentioned Peterborough's best spell came directly before that. It did. According to FOTMob, they have, like a little bit like you have on your site, the momentum map. That's difficult to say. The momentum map. And the 3 minutes before we scored, Tom Bayliss scored, was the only time in the first half, according to this, that Peterborough had any attacking momentum at all. So, of course, it was interesting, by the way, on their free kick to hit the post. Great free kick, but odd decision from the referee to give it. And I'll be honest, I can't even really remember whether it was actually a foul or not, or whether it looked like one. I think it was a dubious one that you'd accept either way from memory. What was confusing is he literally waved it away and then blew for a free kick. That was bizarre. It obviously didn't matter in the end because they hit the post. Good effort, just not quite as good as Tom Bayliss' one a few minutes later. What I would say is what led to our free kick was really impressive. Pordy nipping in front to win the ball relatively high, actually. He's normally the last line, but he stepped in front of the defensive line to win the ball back. Little carry, ended up to Fred, who showed some really good composure and quick feet to be taken out by the centre-half. I think it was Fernandez. And then, of course, from that point, Tom Bayliss goes and sticks it in the top corner, which was wonderful. And then it was around me in the stand, it was a bit of disbelief, partly because you don't see many direct free kicks, partly because we'd scored 2 goals and we haven't seen that for a long old time. But I think that just put everyone in the stadium in a real buoyant mood if we weren't already.
Now, I didn't actually see just looking back, by the way, the referee doesn't wave it away. I've just watched it back on Y Scout. He doesn't wave their free kick away. There was
some sort of gesture, like, or facially or something, because we said it in the same pub after me. And Joe said it in the stadium.
I agree with you. I thought he waved it away, but he's actually, as he's gone, he's pointed down, and it could look like he's come across. But anyway,
fair enough.
I missed Tom Bayliss' goal, so for me, it's still George Grant's free kick, or Jason Shackle against Morecambe. But either way, I thought it wasn't an assist for Jeffrey's goal, but it's like a second assist from Bayliss for the free kick. Really good delivery. So he's created one with a free kick. He scored one with a free kick. I was a big champion of Tom Bayliss at the beginning of the season. Played really well the first few games and then got injured. It was great to see him back on form. There was a moment around the second goal, I can't remember whether it was before or after, where he carried the ball 25, 30 yards. He ran it out of play, or he was forced out of play by one smart bit of defending, which probably was the only one Peterborough did all game. But I just felt that he had that drive. And I think I said to my dad at the time, that's what Ted Bishop did on the kind of, 25 games or whatever, where he was fit. And that's what people have said we've been missing. It was that drive, but with a little more purpose sometimes than you get from Jack Moylan. And again, that's comparison and all that sort of stuff. But it was nice to see a player who, in Bayliss, is experienced, a player who's probably played enough League One games to know what's needed, back on form. And that's probably one thing that's cost us in recent weeks is Ethan Hamilton, Rico Hackett, Tom Bayliss, all having spells out and then all having to try and get back up to that kind of level of fitness. So, are we happy to take 2-0 at half time and move on as we are 20 minutes in?
I'm sure we were all very, very happy to take 2-0 at half time, weren't we? So, yes, absolutely.
Now, Darren Ferguson wasn't, because he made 3 changes at half time. Now, that's a man under pressure, because, you know, they hadn't played particularly well, but it's 2-0, you're still in the game. So they make 3 changes, they come out, and the boy Kean Hayes, he's had a bit of a mare, hasn't he, their defender Hayes yesterday. It's a crossfield ball from Tendai for our third. I thought we came out great. I thought we came out with the right attitude. We didn't try and sit back on the 2-goal lead. I think we sensed the fact that we could go in for the kill. We sensed the fact that they were weaker than a cup of tea that I've made, where I put the milk in first and use one of the co-op's own tea bags and just give it a little stir. They were weaker than that. So we've gone for it. And I was, of all the goals we scored, this was the one I think that actually pleased me the most, because it even though it was a penalty, because it's Freddie Draper. And the number of times I've had to defend Fred to people sat around me, Dad, has been ridiculous. And so, I mean, it's a clear penalty. I think it's Dom Jeffries, isn't it? Gets the other side of Hayes. Hayes watches the ball bounce. He's ball watching. He's fouled him. It's absolutely mindless. Probably lucky not to get a booking, I think, for the foul. But as soon as Fred steps up, what sort of penalty do you think he's going to take? There's no way he's caressing that John Akindi into the corner, is there?
No, and he put it away really confidently as well, which was brilliant. I think everyone was pleased to him. It was nice to see him kiss the badge. I think that's always just a nice little sly little thing in the back. It sends a little message, doesn't it? I always enjoy the one of our own chant. It just added some real positivity to the even more positivity to the afternoon. But I want to touch on just before that, because you're right in saying that Hayes had a tough afternoon, and particularly in that moment, I felt really sorry for him actually, because, well, not that sorry, obviously, but a little bit sorry, because Darren Ferguson made 3 changes at half time. One of those was changing to a back 3. You'd have thought that would be to offer a little bit more solidity. And then just a few minutes after half time, the opposite happened. Hayes was then moved from wing to wing back, found himself one-on-one defending, facing the wrong way. He's not used to that at all. He's a very attacking out-and-out winger. So it's quite naive, I think, change obviously in hindsight, of course. Looked really clumsy, definite penalty. I thought it was a yellow, definitely not a red because of the double jeopardy rule. But I thought it should be a yellow card, personally. Not that it really mattered. And then just like you, just delighted. I think everyone around us was delighted to see Fred score. And I would say a justified goal after 2 starts in a row and 2 really positive performances from him, that he deserved a goal off the back of that. You know, if you can get a goal out of every 2 games from Freddie between now and the end of the season, we're going to be doing rather well as a football club, aren't we? And he'll be worth a lot more than the rumoured £230,000 that was bid for him from Walsall, which I said last week, of course, was not a million miles away from current market value, but he's only a few goals away from it being 2, 3, 4 times that, isn't he? So just a really nice moment. And at that point, I thought it was game over. And I think, to be honest, some of our players maybe felt that. And that was only really just for a few moments after that. Maybe we just took the foot off the gas a little bit. A couple of mistakes just started to creep him a little bit. Nothing too significant other than when they scored, of course. But just, maybe, I'm not going to say the word complacency. I think that's a really harsh word to say, but maybe just took the foot off the gas a little bit. And I think the substitutes, by the way, we'll touch on those in a moment, I'm sure, were just really well timed, because it just picked us back up again. Now, of course, it helps when you score directly off the corner when you bring your subs on, doesn't it? But I suppose the next step really is to talk about the goal that made it 3-1.
Well, it is, but it's also the time to talk about those really odd parallels. And the 60th and the 65th minute, I mentioned it in my write-up, but for those who can't read, I know Ben's watching or don't read. Sorry, Ben. It's important, I think, to look at these parallels. When we were 3-0 up against them in 2021, on the 60th minute, they brought on Ethan Hamilton. And in the 65th minute, Siriki Dembele scored for them to make it 3-1 and get them back in the game. Yesterday, on the 60th minute, they scored their goal, Ricky J. Jones, to get back in the game. Nice finish, by the way, little drag back through his heel. Only thing he did really all afternoon. Only thing we got wrong all afternoon. And on the 65th minute, we brought on Ethan Hamilton, as they had in the 60th minute before, and he scored as soon as he had come on. Now, it was a nice moment. It's an own goal. It's come off Kean Hayes, again, but it's also off Teo Eden. It's kind of a double deflection, off Eden, off Hayes. But it was just when you looks in, and when you're down on your luck, you're down on your luck, and Peterborough are down on their luck. Any 9 times out of 10 that bounces somewhere else. But on this occasion, it drops in the back of the net, and at 4-1, that is absolutely 100% game over.
Yes, if there were any nerves after Posh getting their goal back, like you say, good finish. Obviously, a mistake from us to give them the ball in a dangerous area, and they capitalised on that. But it's the only thing we did wrong all afternoon. I think Michael Skubala was absolutely right in his interview to almost bat it off and say, let's just focus on the things we did well today, because that is, that's, you can do the other things behind the closed doors. But if anyone was a little bit nervous in the stadium, just a few minutes later, to pull it, well, to go 3 goals clear again. But also just really nice, isn't it, from a manager's point of view, for you make some substitutions, and then literally on the set piece, one of those substitutes comes on with his first touch and helps the ball into the back of the net. And then just a few minutes later, 2 of your other substitutes combine to make it 5.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I mean, it was about 20 minutes later, wasn't it? Then they come on 65 minutes and we scored on 82. So it was 18 minutes, 70, whatever. We had complete control after that. The game was over. We could have packed up and gone home. What I want to talk about before we talk about Mr. Collins is what we did well to get ourselves into 4-1. Now, okay, we've got a couple of lucky bounces not lucky, but bounces in the box have gone for us. We've got a penalty, bad defensively. But I just thought that it was probably the best that we have implemented our press since the opening weeks of the season. Now, that is admittedly against a side who didn't seem to be able to pass. They had no cohesion. We're talking good players here. Sam Hughes is on loan there, who was at Leicester City, he was at Chester. Good defender. I think he was at Burton for many seasons, wasn't he, Sam Hughes? Always scored against us, monster in the air. You've got Teo Eden, who, again, saying he's struggling with a poor team here. He was class for us, but he's struggling with a poor team. He gave a penalty away a couple of weeks ago. He's only just gone there. He looked a little bit out of sorts. I thought Fernandez, who we talked about in the first game as being a big player for them, we picked him a couple of weeks in the fantasy league. Thought he was awful. They didn't seem to be able to pass. There was one passage of play in the second half where in the first half, I think it might have been actually, where their keepers cleared it and it's gone to one of our players and we've coughed the ball up and they've cleared it again. It's gone to one of our players again. It's like they just couldn't beat this red wall, the metaphorical red wall. And I just think that it's well worth mentioning how good we were out of possession. Yeah,
I think 100%. And as you know, I'm very happy that we get to talk about us being good at possession, because it is one of my favourite things in the world. But what I would say is that is a strength of ours. It has been all season. It hasn't always worked. Also, what goes into that is 2 things, really. Number one, incredible hard work on the training ground, because it is not something that you have to rely on individuals to do. You have to do that as a unit of 10 players. And if one player is in the wrong position, then you can get passed through. Because teams are good, particularly footballing teams like Peterborough are good at passing through it. And for them not to be able to goes and shows how good we are at it. You can't do that against every team. But one thing I think really helped was Peterborough United. They were, honestly, it was like playing against an under-21 side sometimes in regards to how they went about the game. Because it reminded me so much of when we played against Man City under-21s, not in terms of scoreline, but just stylistically. Because, and I've said this a few times, but I think it was absolutely apparent yesterday, Peterborough United having a goal kick is an attacking opportunity for us. Because they will never go long. They always play out. Always, always, always. And sometimes they went short 2 or 3 times and then were forced to go long, which we're going to mop up all day, and then we're back on the counter. Or sometimes they tried to try and play through us and we won it back high up the pitch, but they would always, always play short. So if you are Tom Bayliss, if you are Conor McGrandles, if you are Ethan Arahan, you can afford to go really high up the pitch alongside or with your front line as well, and really pin them in off a goal kick or any sort of deep possession, because the ball's not going to go over your head off a goal kick. If once or twice it goes over your head, you think, bloody hell, I can't afford to kind of be this aggressive of a positioning, because if it goes over there, we might be outnumbered. I've got a long run back. So you have to, that's why it's normally so difficult in most games. Variety is the key. It's probably one of the reasons why Tottenham are doing so poorly in the Premier League, because they are just so predictable with it. And Peterborough played that into our hands. So it was again, their weaknesses playing into our strengths, which is their style playing into our strengths without the ball. And I mentioned the set pieces as well, and everything fell into place. Now, obviously, we went on the pod on Thursday, so I only said this privately, and this isn't me saying, and I told you so, but in my mind, because I was quite confident before the game that we'd win. Now, I'm not going to pretend for a second that I thought we'd win anywhere near as convincingly as we did.
Same.
I thought it would be
That's
a tighter
everybody.
game, but I thought we'd win because of the stylistic difference, our strengths and their weaknesses, both our set pieces and out of possession. And last little thing, I will shut up in a second. I know you want to talk, is in regard to overall possession. And this is this mysterious thing I've been waiting to say for a day and a half now, is field tilt, which is possession compared to possession in opposition. There's no perfect opportunity of it. So any of you people, particularly like you, that don't like this is it in action.
I didn't
so
say it. I've never said I don't like it.
No, well, you have always taken the mick out of me when I bring it up. So I'm going to go for it here. But possession stats, Peterborough had 61% possession. We had 39. That looks similar to how it did right at the start of the season, doesn't it? Now, we have actually had a lot more of the ball than that recently. However, accurate passes in the opposition half, for us, 124. For them, only 108. So they had almost double the number of total passes in the game, but we had more passes in their half than we did ours. What that is showing is that they had all the ball, but all the possession they had was in their own third, which is where we want it. And we've just mentioned our press, which means that we basically force them to play in certain areas of the pitch so we can pounce. So even though they've got the ball, they've only got it where we want it. So we are it's almost like us having possession sometimes. We're in control of that situation. But yeah, for it to be 54, 55% or so in favour of us for actual possession in dangerous areas, despite them having 60% of the ball, that is exactly our game plan in action. We don't need the ball deep. We just need to make it count when it's in the final third. And we did. And it's nice to see that actually in action.
Do you ever wish you hadn't said the words, we look good out of possession? I do now.
There you go. I'll be quiet now for a few minutes. I'm happy. I'll have to log off now. I've said my piece.
I'm sure the 83 people watching at home are fascinated by it. I genuinely am. I know that I laugh and joke. I do like field tilt. I do like stats. And before you came on the show, I tried to position myself as a little bit of a stat man over Ben, and having you on took the pressure off me a little bit. But I do have what I think is a good stat for you. Now, I have just done a rudimentary count up because I think there is another fundamental reason why we won the game on Saturday and why we have not won as many games on the recent run. Having a quick look down the fixtures, I've worked out that there have been 8 Saturdays since the start of the season where we have not played, in fact 9 counting the first game of the season. So there have been 9 Saturdays where we have not played a game in midweek, where we have played Saturday. Now, I believe that Michael Scabala and the coaching team need that additional time to get the information into the players, because the way we play often adapts to the way the opposition play, which I think is fair to say. For instance, we would operate a slightly higher press, a slightly more aggressive press, perhaps against a Peterborough than you would against the side that tend to go long. For instance, you're happy to let certain players have the ball in certain positions on certain feet, so you work on the opposition. Let me ask you a question, Chris. Of the 9 Saturdays where we haven't had a league game in the midweek, so we have played on the Saturday fresh, how many do you think that we have won?
I'm going to say more than half.
You are right. We beat Burton on the opening Saturday, which I'll take. We beat Mansfield a week after losing to Barnsley. We then beat Stevenage a week after beating Mansfield. So there's 3 from the off already. We won 2-0 at Cambridge a week after beating Wigan Athletic, and there is another one somewhere as I'm scrolling down. We beat Reading, and we'd only played Huddersfield the Saturday before, and obviously there's this one as well. So we have won 6 of our league game wins have been where we've had all week on the training field, and I think that makes a big difference. I also think it's going to make a big difference going forward, because after Blackpool, we've got Saturday, we've got a week at home to prepare for Cambridge. We've then got a week to prepare for Leyton Orient away. We've got a week to prepare for Barnsley away. Bristol Rovers is a Saturday to Saturday. Exeter's a Saturday to Saturday. Wycombe Shrewsbury and Wrexham all Saturday to Saturdays. And I think that that's going to make a big difference. And those games I've just mentioned, I will wager that we will win 65 to 70% of those matches. And if we do that, we're going to trouble the top six. Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to propose that we have a break now before we come back for the Collins part of the show. If you are listening at home, you are about to get a word from our sponsors. If you are watching online, we'll do something a little bit special and go through the comments. We will be back shortly. Right, let's drop back and see who we've got in. Lots of comments tonight, lots of people watching.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for logging in.
I'm not going to go. Hello, thank you. I'm not going to go into all the hellos. I'm just going to pick on any of the comments that are worth mentioning. Of which somebody says we'll get a strike for all the illegal substance talk. Daz said that
was all you.
We've got some James Collins stuff. It was all me. That's unusual, isn't it? We've got some James Collins stuff, which we will pick it up on. Now, this is an interesting one. I think Hackett has a battle now to get a start over Dom Jeffries. I mean, it's one game, but I think Dom Jeffries gives us a little more balance, whereas Hackett's a little bit more forward thinking. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think I would agree with Simon here. I'd say, yeah, he has got a battle on now, and that's a good thing. You want that in your squad, don't you? And Hackett definitely has the potential to make an impact off the bench if he doesn't start. What I would say about Dom, I think he's been solid all season. He's been deployed in many different roles. I think he's settled primarily at wing back now, but yeah, I think he's probably more defensively sound than Rico. It's maybe not quite as explosive going forward, but yeah, certainly adds balance. But I think he's kind of quietly gone about his business and not really let us down at any point this season. Maybe doesn't stand out like Rico does at times, but I think he's really consistent, and that is a very underrated attribute, I think, in League One, is consistency.
Andy Brown says, should we change a winning team? I'll take this one. I think yes, because lots of players have played 90 minutes or 80 odd minutes on Saturday, and turning around for Tuesday is quick. I think it's a squad game, and I think if we're to actually begin to replicate that win percentage, which is more than 60% when it's Saturday to Saturday, if we're starting to implement to replicate that on Tuesday games, I think you've got to use your squad. For me, and I know that Chris will disagree with this, but for me, James Collins starts on Tuesday night over Fred, and Fred comes on later on. Not because Fred's being dropped for any reason other than we'll rotate those players and make sure we're getting the right number of minutes into their legs. Chris, quick one.
I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think James Collins could start and maybe should. But I also would be happy if Fred started. I'm happy to go with it. In terms of the changing a winning team, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because for every game is different, and we know we do adapt to the opposition quite a bit. Maybe not in terms of our in possession approach, but certainly out of possession. So sometimes you want to have players that can perform certain roles, but also you want to reward people who have justified being picked the previous match. So for people who have stood out, I think you can't drop them out of Freddie in this last game. But for people who have maybe been okay and had a decent game, then maybe you can mix a bit. I actually expect to see a very similar team on Tuesday.
With changes. 20 seconds to answer this one, Chris. And I'll answer it in 20 seconds. Wickens or G-Cock going forward?
G-Cock until he makes a mistake that justifies being dropped for Wickens.
I am going to say Wickens comes back in, but this is the closest that we have had to goalkeepers in terms of performances. I'm not going to say in terms of talent, because it would be wrong to assess either when we're not seeing them every day. But it's the most settled I've felt with a substitute goalkeeper at any point I can remember in Lincoln City history. I've always been very clear who the better goalkeeper is, and I think Zach G-Cock has been excellent in the first 3 or 4 games, bar the Bolton mistake. Right, we shall come back in. I'm just waiting for 39:20 because I am like that. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your support, whoever that was who is supporting us, advertiser, whatever. So we are in the unusual position where we're still talking about Saturday's game after the break. And the reason for that, I think, has got to be James Collins. Now, there's a reason. James Collins came on after 60 minutes, 65 minutes, I think. Fred had a great game. But instantly, you can just see the difference in the way he moves, the positions he takes up, even the way he was using his body against defenders. And I'm not saying, he was outstanding. I'm not saying he stood out head and shoulders above anybody else, because everybody had a good game. That you could see in James Collins that, hang on, there's a proper striker. And in my write-up, I likened it to a Jamie Forrester. At 34, you're not going to get James Collins making a long busting Joe Taylor style run that strips the defence. That pace probably isn't going to be there. But we said about it in the pub, didn't we? He was making little steps to the side, or the way he was turning his body, the way he was anticipating, was stealing him 3 or 4 yards a time. And he's going to be away from the goals. You can already see what a huge, huge asset he's going to be. He's perfectly suited to the needs of the football club at this moment in time. And it is I'm not sure there has ever been a more perfect piece of recruitment. And it's hard to get too carried away on 25 minutes, by the way. But it just feels like I don't think there's been a more perfect piece of recruitment that I can remember in terms of a club's needs.
Yeah, he's exactly what we needed in the moment, isn't he? We've made a lot of signings that, in hindsight, maybe have turned out to be fantastic signings and you're building for the future. But there was a need in the club here and now. And from that 25 minutes that we saw, we have absolutely... I think credit goes to the recruitment team, of course, and James himself for agreeing to come to the club. It seems like it fits like a glove, and it's rare that you see that justified so quickly. Even if there's someone who is more experienced that is there to fill a gap straight away, it's rare that you see it in the first few minutes, isn't it? But I agree. You just saw what we'd been missing, and didn't do anything that was particularly outstanding. He just did a lot of things really, really well, and so that, again, all the little bits and bobs you do when he hasn't actually got the ball at his feet. What he did at the ball at his feet was the icing on the cake, and was a lovely moment for everybody. And I think sure it was brilliant for him to score on his debut. Of course, his first actual goal this season as well, which is helpful. But the things around it was outstanding. And I noticed it. I think this might have been actually after he scored his goal, but when he had his left-footed shot from just the edge of the box, went across the goalkeeper. Jovan almost followed in to maybe make it 6 at the time. I think we got a corner off it in the end. But he started that run. He bent his run on the defender's blind side, and he was on his way. So he was already at full speed, but he was onside before the defender had even turned round. So he already had the space, regardless of whatever pace difference there might be in the two players. Fair play to McGrandles to see the pass, but Collins made the angle to make the pass quite easy, and then he got a shot away. He had one shot with his left foot and it was on target. He had one shot with his right foot and it went in net. Right, you can't really complain at that, can you? And it's just little things like that made such a difference. What I will say is, in the few minutes where Collins and House were on the pitch together, we looked very deep. They almost looked to be doing a similar job, and we didn't. I think it's important that we have someone that can run in behind. Might have been because House was tiring a little bit, and he'd been doing that slightly deeper role before Collins came on. But as soon as Jovan came on, it really complemented Collins. And I think what was nice is, of course, Jovan got the assist for Collins' goal. And we're absolutely right, I think, to credit and heap praise upon James Collins because he played brilliantly. But I think it's a nice moment for Jovan because he won the ball back as well, by the way. He won it back. He ran with it. Great overlapping run on the left side by Tendai to commit the defender as well. So then the defender couldn't just make one run. He had to be aware of both. But Jovan stayed calm, timed the pass really well, and then just an absolutely exquisite finish from James Collins to announce himself to imps all around the world, obviously primarily in the stadium. And all of us felt the same, though. Oh, we've got a proper striker. And we've got good strikers that have got potential, but what we have now is someone ready and made, and it is nice.
Do you remember any other chips from Lincoln City players at Sinsel Bank? Any chipped finishes? Because I've been racking my brains. I think there was one in a 2-0 win against Scunthorpe in 2005 that really stands out. I think it might have been, it was Yale or Taylor Fletcher. But I can't remember another chip.
That was a Tuesday night game, wasn't it?
It was on Sky at the end.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. It was. I think it was Taylor Fletcher. I think Yayo scored. Well, we scored in the opening minutes, definitely. I seem to think.
Yeah, Yayo scored in the opening minutes, and it finished 2-0, didn't it? That game.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Oh, that was a good day. I would say Joe Taylor, to be honest, because it was a chip, but it was a chip across the goalkeeper, which is a couple of them last season. It wasn't necessarily a chip in terms of like Cantona-esque as such, but it was running the angle that he was running across, and then a chip towards the far post, because the goalkeepers are always taught to kind of come out, close the angle here, and you chip it over the area where they can't get their hands to or their legs to. And it's just a good finish. And yeah, so it's been but in terms of actual out-and-out finishes, was the one in the 7-1 win over Rochdale, maybe?
Possibly. I'll tell you what, we'll move on because we've still got stuff to get through, and we are on 41 minutes. What I want to talk now about Zach Geacock. We did mention him there in the break, but people who are listening in at home will not have heard that. I was impressed with Zach Geacock throughout the game yesterday, as I was throughout the Northampton game. He came to claim what he needed to, very little, because Peterborough were rubbish. But he did have to come and make a couple of claims. Stewart take the ball. His delivery was decent. And then at the end, 2 minutes into injury time, he does stop it being 5-2. It's a really good header from Cipriani, actually. And okay, it may be, some people say it's straight at Geacock. Some people say it's his job. But he's a good header and he's pulled off a good save. And for me, it was nice. When you've scored 5 goals, sometimes your goalkeeper can be forgotten. And actually, I haven't looked at the latest Stacey West ratings, but I will do so now. I would wager a bet that he's actually got quite a high rating as well, based on the fact that he has effectively stopped it becoming 5-2. And I know that you will probably want to mention him as well being a goalkeeper. I mean, he's got a 7.3. He's actually got a higher rating than Dariqua, McGrandles, Rowan, Ben House, Ethan Hamilton, Jovan, and the other 2 subs.
Well, yes, of course, I'll always happily talk about goalkeepers. But yeah, he was good. He was really good. I think he made some good saves, absolutely, when needed to. What I was particularly impressed with was his distribution, because we didn't play out too much, because we knew that we had a domination over Posh aerially. We knew that we'd be able to win the ball back high up the pitch. We almost wanted them to have deep possession rather than win it back in our area. So we did go long. People forget that. We went long off goal kicks and from deep, but the ball stuck at the top end of the pitch, and we played some nice football after that, which is why it doesn't get criticised, and rightly so, because it worked. But Geacock, part of that is also the ball going in the right area, and Geacock's delivery with his feet is really good, like really, really good for this level. I think it's very telling where a goalkeeper is taking a free kick almost on the halfway line because you trust him to have good delivery, which happened late in the second half. So, yeah, I'm obviously going to heap praise on him. And I actually think that's something he's got over Wickens. And Wickens is not bad at all with his feet. He's better than Jensen was, for example, last season. But I think it's a real asset that Zach has. And it certainly aids our style when we do want to go more direct to play off pieces at the top end of the pitch. If you're putting it on a sixpence, which he kind of was a lot of the time, it means that it's kind of rehearsable then, and it's less of a lottery. It's less of a 50-50. It's more in your favour. So, yeah, fair play to him for that, as well as his traditional goalkeeping, because he didn't put a foot wrong in terms of handling and things yesterday, though he wasn't really tested too much other than the one you mentioned.
Excuse me. There's also somebody, Andy Brown there, said Reedy scored with a chip. It was an outstanding chip. I want to say Barrow or Eastleigh, but it was a turn and he chipped from the edge of the area. It was outstanding. And actually, that was a goal that I wasn't at that game. I think for some reason that was potentially just after I'd moved back. So, yeah, really good. Right. So we shall likely move on, but I don't want to because we beat Posh 5-1 and it's the biggest win against them. So I still want to press you, Mr. Lamming, for your man of the match. And you can't say everybody. There was a lot of good performances, but who would you have picked as your man of the match to wrap up our coverage of the Peterborough game?
Dom Jeffries.
Very good. I'm going to go Ethan Rahan because I thought the sponsors got it right. I thought he was outstanding. He's just a better player than most footballers that have come through Lincoln City, and that's no criticism of them. But he does the unsexy stuff. He doesn't score. He doesn't assist. He doesn't take set pieces. He's just a gentle heartbeat of the team, like Alex Woodyard was, but better, and like Liam Bridcut was, but not injured all the time, which is quite nice.
Yeah, they are really serious. They're really similar. Him and Bridcut are, I'd say, on par with the best footballers I've ever seen in Lincoln City shirts. I think Ethan Rahan is better because he's more available, and availability is a skill in itself.
Do you know which of Liam Bridcut and Tyler Walker have played fewer games for Lincoln? It was. I used it as a quiz question on the.
I'm going to say Bridcut. I'm going to say Bridcut, but as a guess.
Yeah, it's wrong. It's Walker. Yeah, Bridcut's actually played more games than Walker. So there we go. Right. I tell you what. Instead of us talking, should we have somebody else talking? Ben has spoken to Martin from the It's Not Orange podcast, because after thrashing Peterborough 5-1, which we'd love to talk about all night but can't, we now have to look ahead to Blackpool, who are the visitors to Sinsel Bank on Tuesday night, where they will be looking for their first win on Lincoln soil since 1998. That really surprises me. Here's what Martin has to say about the upcoming clash.
Let's look at your current run then. On the headlines basically are that you've had 3 wins since November, but of those you've only lost 1 in the league. So what's been the struggle to get 3 points? Is it that there's not been the consistency up front? I mean, obviously you had a good win at Exeter yesterday. But is there anything in particular that you're missing, and is it something that can be fixed maybe before next Monday, before the window shuts?
I think we don't have too many options in midfield. There's not an awful lot of creativity from central midfield, because if you look at the goals from yesterday, it was out wide. It was Bloxham scored 1 and made 1, and CJ Hamilton scored the first one again from a wide position. So you can see where the strengths are, you can see where the weaknesses are. We're a little bit like a lot of teams. It's that top end of the pitch that we're lacking in, really. I'd like to see us sign another goal scorer. We had Jordan Rhodes at the start of last season, who did brilliant up until Christmas. Then he got a bad injury just afterwards and hasn't scored a league goal since. So I think the problem is probably finishing teams off. We've not won a home game, as I said, since September. We've had about 3 or 4 0-0 draws and 1-1 draws where we've dominated in spells, but just can't kill teams off. And it's the whole picture across football, isn't it? It doesn't matter who you are. You're only as good as what you do at the top end of the pitch. So we are a very solid, well organised League One team that probably, I think we'll finish higher than where we are now. I think we're going to have I hope we have a crack at the playoffs, because if we win our game in hand, it's only 5 points off Barnsley. I don't think this league is I'm sure you agree, this league is not great. Once again, I'm not even impressed by Birmingham and Wrexham. I don't know how you feel, but the 2 teams that and Huddersfield as well. I don't think there's an outstanding football team there. I think they're all well organised. They've got good players. They've spent money that we can't spend, but the vast majority are much of a muchness. It's just finishing them off. You've got to have the quality at the top end. So that's our Achilles heel, is that we're hard to beat, but we need to be a little bit more ruthless. We need to score goals and we need to win home games. But we've got something like, I think we've got 4 or 5 more home games than away games now. We've had so many postponements, we've missed a few. So once we've got you out the way on Tuesday, regardless, we've then got the next 4 out of the next 5 are at home, and the away game's Burton.
Right. Okay.
It opens up then a little bit. So I think it's just scoring goals. It's just having that magic touch up front. We've lacked it all season.
For a minute there, listening to that, we're back, by the way, now, Gary and Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Listening to that, it was almost like I was listening to a Lincoln fan talking about our team 3 weeks ago, because it's almost the same. I mean, difficult to beat. People might disagree with that, but actually we have been difficult to beat, but we couldn't kill games off. We couldn't create chances. We couldn't finish the chances that we did create. Very, very similar. You and I were talking off air, and their leading scorer, Carl Joseph, has just joined Hull. Their leading scorer after that, I think, league scorer is Ashley Fletcher on 4, which isn't, it's even fewer than 3 or 4 of our players, or 2 or 3 of our players. They're below us in the league. If they win their game in hand, I think they'd still be a point behind us. So they're looking at the playoffs from a slightly different perspective to us. I mean, how do you see the game? First of all, do you think it's ambitious for them to be looking at the playoffs? So, I mean, I suppose it's reasonable. It's January. We were 10, 12 points adrift, weren't we, last year at this time?
Yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable. I think it's unlikely for them. I still think it's unlikely for us, because I think one comment I disagree with in there is that there's not outstanding teams. I think there are some really good teams in League One this season. Yeah, Birmingham are good. There are lots of teams that there are good. And I think there's a 3 or 4 that, if they got promoted this season, would have a half a decent chance of staying in the Championship. Obviously, Birmingham would be comfortably mid-table, I think, if not top half. But apart from that, I think you want your club to be ambitious, don't you? You want to be looking up rather than down. They're not at all at risk of relegation. So there's only one direction to look into with this long left of the season, still loads and loads of games to play for. So yeah, I think that it's unlikely for them, but I think it's not ridiculous to be looking that way, just like it's not ridiculous for us to be looking that way as well. Ultimately, we're closer than they are, so that's nice. But one thing that I think you might be asking in a minute is, well, do we just do the same as we did against Peterborough? Then is it going to be a similar game? And the answer is no. It's absolutely not going to be a similar game. Blackpool play 4-4-2 always. It's quite a traditional style of 4-4-2 as well in terms of getting the ball wide and getting balls into the box. That's a very, very different threat compared to what Peterborough pose. So it'll be a very different game. But yeah, what are your thoughts on what our colleague mentioned there?
Yeah, I didn't fancy Blackpool at the beginning of the season, but the one thing I did like was Jordan Rhodes. He scored 15 goals in 29 games for them on loan last season. And he was the sort of striker that I was citing we should be looking at. Not him particularly, but that kind of dropping out of the Championship, proven track record, basically James Collins. But this year he started 3 league games for them. He's come off the bench 18 times and hasn't scored yet. That is the difference between Blackpool being where they are now and Blackpool being where Barnsley are now. It's the only difference. If they'd got a striker that had scored 7, 8, 9 goals at this stage of the season, that's where they'd be. And do you know what? It's the same for us. There's so many parallels, I think, between us and Blackpool that it's frightening. They're very, very similar in terms, not in terms of the way that we play or the management changes and all that sort of stuff, but just that, they are solid. They have been a little bit hard to beat, as we have. I just feel that we've probably moved on a little bit more. We've probably got a better head coach. No disrespect to Steve Bruce. He's been there. He's done it. But there is a time when new ideas are needed. I don't think he's had the impact on Blackpool that he was quite expected to. They feel to me like a team in transition at the moment. They feel to me like a team with a lot of unanswered questions that are not heading in a direction. When I say a positive direction, they need more of a rebuild than being down the road as a rebuild. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Like I think they've got to limp through to the end of this season. And just the point I'm making, like David, I'm just looking at Davies, Keller, Dunn, Barnsley, 9 goals. Blackpool have got somebody that had scored 9 goals. Some of those draws would be wins. Some of those defeats would be draws, and they would be up there. And that really is, for me, the difference. Louis Barry at Stockport, 15, Kone at Wickham, 14, Stansfield, Birmingham, 12. If you've got somebody that's putting the ball in the back of the net, that's the difference between the top 6 and the next 6, 7 or 8 teams. And below that, below your Blackpools, there are more fundamental issues than not putting chances away. But my argument would be, if you look at the teams, I haven't got the league table in front of me now, but if you look at the teams from 6th up, Barnsley, Stockport, Wrexham, Wickham, Birmingham, they've either got one player that scored a double-figure goals or 9 goals, or 2 or 3 players that are chipping in with 5, 6 or 7, and that's just what Blackpool don't have, and it's just what we haven't had. And then you've got teams like Mansfield who have got 2 players in the top scorers list who aren't up there because they've got wider issues, and they'll continue to tumble down the table. So that's my hot take. You don't score goals, you don't win games, you don't get promoted.
yeah, very true, very true. And hopefully we can score more than they do on Tuesday night. Would you like me to have a very quick talk about how I think we might be able to do that?
Of course, as long as it doesn't involve field tilt, you crack on.
No, not this time.
What you should have done there is pull up 6 or 7 bits of paper. Go, let me find the one that doesn't mention field tilt or XG or suspended animation or whatever.
It does mention XG very briefly because even though they have struggled for goals, they have actually overperformed their XG by 4. So they've scored 37 and only should have scored 33 according to the numbers. So obviously they're quite close numbers, but it's not like they're making loads of chances and they're just missing them. They're not actually creating them at a huge rate either. But actually, in terms of just the numbers, they don't really stand out in any way. They're not particularly bad at anything. They're not particularly good at anything. They are quite solid. But there was something that only really one little thing here which jumped out to me, which showed how I think we could potentially be on the right side of this. I don't think it'll be a free-flowing game either way. I think it'll be a very tight game of 2 defensively sound teams. Now, Blackpool actually play the most long passes per 90 out of any team in League One. Yet they're not highest in terms of long pass percentage because they're about mid-table in terms of total passes played. So their percentage of long passes is actually quite similar to ours, but the actual number of them per game is actually the highest in League One. But I think what's really interesting is that, and again, I forget the name of the chap, but our colleague who Ben was chatting to, Martin, thank you. He mentioned that almost all of their chances are coming from out wide, and that's the numbers absolutely back that up. They've actually created the highest number of chances, so basically passes that end in a shot, so key passes, the highest in the league from corners out of any team, and also the second highest from crosses. Yet they're not the highest scorers in the league, and in terms of set pieces, they are mid-table for scoring them and conceding them. Scored 10, conceded 10. We are significantly better than them, both defending them and scoring them, despite that being their main threat. We're good at defending our box. We're good at defending balls from wide. And if that's the only threat that they pose, or the biggest threat that they pose, I think that can be positive for us. The fact that most of those balls from dead balls are delivered by Lee Evans, and he didn't play on Saturday against.
Of course, I picked him. So
yeah, in your fantasy team,
I picked him on the fantasy
so I don't know.
So of course he didn't.
I don't know if he's available, of course, for Tuesday night, but that's obviously a good sign. You can't take anything for granted, of course, because part of it comes down to just sheer numbers. If they're putting loads and loads and loads of balls in the box, just probability-wise, they're going to get on the end of one of them. But I think it's quite useful for us to be able to set up in a way that we know that the vast majority of their threat is going to come from either getting the ball to a winger and getting the ball in the box, or simply off a free kick or a corner. Like, that's easy enough for us to defend against. 4-4-2 is the perfect formation for our 3-5-2 system to defend against. It allows us to press with the front two against two centre-backs. That is fantastic. It gives us a +1 defensively with 3 centre-backs against 2 forwards. And we have a spare man in centre midfield, so they can then double up with the wing-back. The spare one could double up with the wing-back when the ball goes wide. It's perfect. 3-5-2 versus 4-4-2, 3-5-2. On all things being equal, should win 99 times out of 100. Now, it's not as simple as that, obviously, but it gives us an advantage, I think, in terms of how we play compared to how they do. So, I think we've got a good chance here. I can see us winning 1-0. To be honest, that would be my hot take, my prediction. It could easily be 0-0, which I would take, to be honest. Three wins in a row, 3 unbeaten games in a row off the back of lots of 3 defeats in a row would be positive. But I honestly think we can win this. Of course it would be 4. Yeah, of course it would be 4.
Stevenage.
But Stevenage. But I just really fancy us. I think we're good, and I think we've got a bit of confidence. And if we can score early, if we can start the game well, and we can score when we're on top, which is something that we did against Peterborough, then I think we can have a good evening. And last point is, this could be the start of a really positive run for us. Yeah, I know the time. Because if we beat Blackpool, we've then got Wigan, Cambridge, Orient, Mansfield and Burton in our next few games. Now, Orient will be tough, but I think on paper, that's a favourable run, isn't it? Like, we could have a good spell here. Hot take is, I actually think by the end of that run, we'll be in the playoffs, but I think we'll fall short between then and the end of the season because the fixture list gets quite tough towards the end of the season. But I actually think by the time we play Burton Albion at home, we will be in the top 6, but we will fall away.
Couple of points. First of all, I actually want some sort of reward for picking Lee Evans in the Fantasy League, because he is not expected to be in contention for the game against us either. He dropped out of training with a calf injury on Thursday when I picked him. So finally, my EFL Fantasy League curse works in Lincoln's favour. So I want some kudos for that. Now, I've got the XG table up. I know Jack Mulhall and Andy Pearson love XG. I know people love a little bit of XG. Pete, if you're listening, I don't care what you think about XG. Do you know that in the XG table, so this is where games are decided not on the goals that are scored, but on the quality of the chances created, which I know games aren't decided like that, but over 46 games, it tends to even out, I think. Or if you have a remarkable season where you are overperforming your XG, the next season it does come back to haunt you. You've got to create. Mark Kennedy puts 11th with really poor XG and touches in the box, but it came back to haunt us the next season. Plymouth did it a few years ago, were relegated the next season when they had the likes of Graham Carey and Antonio Sasovich. We would actually be 8th in the XG table. And I think, I don't know how soon this has been updated, so it might not include yesterday's games. as opposed to 12th. So it's not yesterday's game. So with yesterday's games, we could even be higher. Blackpool would actually be higher than they are. So they would be 10th. And with yesterday's games, they will also be higher than they should be. But Wrexham would be all the way down in 14th. So they're not creating the chances. They are having the rub of the green, and that may be unsustainable. Reading, who was 7th when this XG table was created, would be 20th if XG based on results. So they've really rode their luck. Actually, Wycombe, Stockport, Huddersfield, Birmingham, Bolton and Barnsley would be the top 6. Bolton in the top 6. Those Ian Everett knockers, they might just need to pay a little attention. Right. So we've covered Peterborough. We've covered Blackpool. You may think that's the end of the Stacey West podcast. We are just moments away from bringing what has been a momentous 353rd episode where we've talked about our biggest win against Peterborough United ever. How do I finish that off? Well, the only way I'm going to finish it off is just by saying a huge thank you to the people who turned out for the Former Player Association and Stacey West Podcast collaboration on Friday night at Attention Twisted Realities, where we had John Schofield and Graham Bressington on stage. We had Matt Carmichael and Gavin Gordon and Paul Degare. Former players, it was a laugh. We had some really good fun. Graham Bressington was on form. John Schofield told some great stories. We are planning another one. It's going to be later in the year because the former players have got something on. But, and this is probably news to Chris, actually, I may have mentioned it yesterday, we are planning a Stacey West special. It will be open, first of all, to patrons of the site, Patreons, I don't know how to pronounce it. So if you are a Patreon of the site, we will be looking at putting on a free show for you, Attention Twisted Realities, where there will be the 3 of us, potentially 4 of us with Charlie. We'll have some games. We'll do a podcast. We're hoping to get a special guest. There'll be a bar open. They serve hot food. So that's something that we will look into. And then if there isn't full uptake from patrons, we'll open it up to the wider public. But that is something that I am hoping to do before my London Marathon stint, because the former players have very kindly donated a signed shirt, squad shirt from last season, and a framed signed former players shirt from last season. It's the white shirt that looks like it's got paint on it. There'll be other prizes as well. There's going to be a gym box. We didn't run a raffle for this, but we are going to run a raffle for my London Marathon efforts. And on that note as well, thank you to everybody who has sponsored me so far. I think I'm now within £100 or so of hitting the 2,000. So the next target will be 3, but I was desperate to get to the 2 because that was my commitment. My other commitment, of course, is to run 26.2 miles, but that's the commitment that we can put off for another day. For the record, I did run 11 on Saturday morning before the game and ended up doing 31,000 steps on Saturday, which is around 31,000 more than I ever used to see myself doing 10 years ago. So, but thank you everybody for your support. Keep an eye out for the Patreon Stacey West special. And I think we're just about done, aren't we, Chris? Anything more to add, do you think?
Oh, no, I think that all sounds very exciting, doesn't it? Nice way to end a positive weekend. I would just like to say, I was really looking forward to this. I think I put a message in the Stacey West group chat yesterday when I think it was 4-1 at the time. I would just like it to be known I'm having a lovely afternoon. And I'd like it to be known right now I've had a lovely evening. So thank you for that. Hope everyone else has. But yeah, I suppose that's it from me.
I put it on Instagram as well. It was a great day. Yesterday, Saturday was a great day. It was a great day for Ben as well, because we've got to mention it. Next Gen Base, a raffle. If there's a raffle and he enters it, he wins it. I mean, they won the box. He won the League 2 or the National League Winners Medal in a raffle. He won one of the shirts on Saturday. Honestly, it's unbelievable how much that boy wins. I should get him to put my lottery ticket on. So if there's a raffle, Stacey West presenters will be Stacey West presenters called Ben are prohibited from entering. They can put their money in, but I won't put their tickets in. Other than that, we are winning. Oh, and he won a dartboard as well. There we go. A dartboard stand, which he promised me and never gave me. Anyway, empty promises. That's something that perhaps in the run-up to Christmas, or certainly the run-up after Christmas, Lincoln City fans felt they were being delivered. Well, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, there was no empty promises on Saturday. Peterborough United came. Peterborough United saw. Peterborough United had their trousers down, their rosy red buttocks spanked 5 times, and they've been sent off to the lower reaches of League One to worry about a relegation struggle and a manager who didn't want to dig the players out but just called them embarrassing, shameful, and the weakest group of players he's ever managed. The Lincoln City effect. Up the Imps.
Up the Imps.